Oh, God.
That looks like we have everybody in, so welcome everyone to our session this evening. We are here to hear about Reflect the Light and Shade of a Long Story as part of SALA. And I'd like to thank you firstly for your patience in transferring this event online. We're really disappointed we can't be all together, but the current university COVID guidelines mean that we have to put this one online. So yeah, thank you very much for coming into the online space, and the video will also be recorded. I'd like to note firstly that Nunki Wara were planning to join us for Welcome to Country, but unfortunately Taylor Power is unable to attend. She's been called away at the last minute, but I would like to thank Taylor for her contribution to the work and her willingness to welcome us. In her absence, I'd like to acknowledge that we are broadcasting this session from Kaurna Yatta. I'd like to acknowledge that we're on the traditional country for the Kaurna Miina of the Adelaide Plains and recognise and respect their cultural heritage, belief and relationship with country. I'd like to acknowledge the relationship with that land especially, and that it is of continuing importance to the Kaurna people living today. Pay my respects to elders past and present, to the Aboriginal people joining us, either from Kaurna country or from whichever country you are, and for everybody else, wherever you are today and whatever country we're on, we acknowledge that long history of life and culture and celebration. With that in mind, I'd just like to firstly turn to our guests. With me in the room, I have Simone and Natalie and Ali from the Unbound Collective and Dominic with us, and just ask if there's anything you'd like to add to the acknowledgement before we begin.
And we've also got Faye.
Yeah, Faye's just arrived too. Faye,
welcome, yep. Faye, also from the Unbound Collective.
Yeah, definitely. I want to acknowledge that I'm on beautiful Kaurna Yatta near Karawira Parry, and that it's cold on Kaurna Yatta, but beautiful weather, beautiful day as well. So yeah, I want to acknowledge this country.
Same. I'd like to acknowledge also that we're on Kaurna Yatta, and I do that as a young Wandjara woman who lives out of country but has resided on Yatta all my life. And I'd just like to acknowledge Dominic in the room as a Kaurna person, and just thank you for having us here this evening.
And I back that up. I concur. Thank you, everybody.
And I back that up and back it up. As an Narungga woman, born, raised, live, love, work, create on Kaurna country, and also want to acknowledge Dominic and acknowledge all our ancestors and future leaders, and the beautiful country that sustained us and that has actually really driven the impetus for this work, which we'll talk about a bit later. But yeah, thank you very much for hosting us.
No, thank you all very much. So I might start by just describing a little bit around the exhibition that this work fits into. The exhibition is called Invisibility. It's on at Mod until the end of November. And with this exhibition, we responded to questions from the public who said they really wanted to hear more about a range of issues, but one of those issues was about hearing from voices from people who aren't often heard, thinking about social equity, thinking about climate and changes to the environment, and thinking about aspects of technology as well. And we've combined those questions into really trying to uncover the hidden stories of things that are unnoticed and things that go unseen. And central to that was us responding to a provocation from Professor Irene Watson, who's our Pro-Vice Chancellor for Aboriginal Leadership. And Irene was really keen for us to reveal some of the hidden stories of place that have very deep histories, and to connect that with visitors as they come into the very urban area that sits around Mod on the UniSA City West campus. And so it's been an absolute privilege to be able to work with Unbound over the past period of time to really think about those connections, and to work to reveal something. So I would like to start by giving everyone an opportunity to view that work. I know we can't be in the gallery today to look at it together or to give you an opportunity to really sit with it, but we'd like to show the video. The duration's about 8 minutes, and then we'll continue the conversation and the presentation after we experience the work. So please enjoy Reflect, the Light and Shade of a Long Story.
Hear the river flow humming softly. A river lullaby floats on home rivers and wetlands in the sky. Life's arteries, forever pumping stories of place. We inherit memory on rivers flowing. The river is awake. The river has memory. The river moves and flows. Water is a life source and connects us all. Protecting country is at the heart of First Peoples.
Step by step, I walk along paths submerged in a beautiful grounding energy. Thriving parklands wrap the bustling city like a blanket. This is my ancestors' land. How much of this land is left to our people? I stand here grounded on my country. How much beauty has been taken away? I crave connection to traditions. How much culture has been destroyed? My ancestors walk beside me every step of the way. How many stories have been lost? I wonder when there will be action. How many died at the hands of colonization? How many continue to die? Step by step I walk, my ancestors beside me, every step of the way.
What has this place seen? Generations of change, loss, devastation, and new beginnings. Through waves of change, it continues to nurture life within it and surrounding it. Its life ensures the rich, natural diversity of this place. All the things we notice at a glance, but often take for granted. To survive in this way takes strength, but to take the leap to thrive calls for immense courage. Walking through this place, I see its strength and survival, from the birds who call this place home to the trees that are anchored in its banks. I admire this strength, this resilience. It inspires me to be strong, in spite of the doubt and odds weighed against me, not just for myself, but for my family. What has this place seen?
On Garnayata, the waterways, the beautiful magical creeks and wetlands of the earth and the spirit of country have been transformed into concrete drains. Before the construction of the southwestern suburbs drainage works, the river spread out into lagoons near the site occupied by the Adelaide Airport. The river was once a permanent stream, fed by springs and prodigal in breeding fish and yabbies. Its banks were the natural habitat of possums, ducks, lizards, snakes, birds and insects, kangaroos and emus, and also wallabies, moved freely along the river gums and grassy woodlands of the plains. This is the place of beginnings, where freshwater springs give forth to wetlands. This is a place where the trees carried the marks of the time before, the thousands of generations of our ancestors who have cared for this place. There are trees on this country that were marked by our old people during the long lawful time, the time before the concrete rivers and polluting engines. We speak of this ongoing racism and environmental destruction of the planet, and how this destruction can be seen here as the continuation of colonial processes into the present.
I cry when I see a plastic island float by on a river of fractured streams, now a canal for wastewater. I stand by the river, head tilted to one side, shoulders weighted in sorrow. I find it hard to see beauty in this river anymore. It just reflects painful memories of you. I collect and hide them amongst the reeds, tucked under swans nesting their eggs. I ask the trees to absorb and release them in their blooms, so we can breathe a scent of you. This river runs long, but shallow in depth. Unlike your life, short but deep. Gum trees rattle in hot winds. White smoke billows. We cloud our bodies to arrest our worries and heal us from fear. Ducks fuss in the shallows around the feet of an ancestral pose. Through song and mud, the river calls me, calls us. We strip off our clothes and jump in. Old Nana works on the banks, where the river swallows the dirt. As she turns the topsoil, the yams are layered out in a line, just like ants marching. Nana protects them within the dirt. Safe. Now we can rest, as seeds know how to grow.
People see your pretty face as if that's all you have to offer. I see you for what you are. A lover, a provider, a place of refuge for Aboriginal children as they shied away from the prying eyes of invaders. A survivor with depth not many dare to explore. Home. Majestic and ancient, your grounding presence so powerful, it dwarfs the buildings around you and renders them invisible. Sitting on your banks and marvelling at your grace, I imagine our people meandering along your water's edge. Running river, racing thoughts, the birds' songs start to sound like distant hymns. The whispering breeze, a gentle reminder to breathe while I digest what life was like for the Ghana children that were forced to recite them. I wonder how often your tears ripple the water as people bash a ball across the plain without ever questioning how many of my ancestors' bodies fertilise the growth surrounding it. Beneath your calm surface lies blood-stained roots, generations of untold truths, and a graveyard of dreams crushed by invasion. And yet, despite it all, you are here, filled with sustenance and hope. You are alive. The spirit of this land, invincible and almighty. 'Tis by her I am guided. 'Tis she who makes me strong.
Here we probably need a small round of applause to mark the end of the work. So we'll do our best in a silent environment. But yeah, it's just such a privilege to see that work in full. I confess I relish the opportunity to sneak into the gallery space whenever I can and just sit with parts of it as much as I can, have my feelings amplified wherever possible. Poetry in a fractured world allows new entry points, responding to the constraints of thoughts in ways that seem to unfurl and give space. And I appreciate the opportunity to do that and to see those new perspectives every time I experience the work. To start us this evening, I wanted to invite one of our contributing poets, award-winning Ghana Ngarrindjeri writer Dominic Guerrera, who is with us. And so I'd now like Dominic to join us. We've asked Dominic to perform his poem and to reflect on the work. So over to you, Dominic, and then we'll have a couple of questions. And I should also say that if you've got questions that you want to pick up, you're welcome to use the chat. And then I will do my best to pick those up in the discussion later. But yeah, welcome, Dominic. It's such a privilege to have you with us, and I appreciate you being here. Over to you.
Thank you. Oh, I just became really large on my screen. So first of all, I just want to acknowledge, I find it bizarre as a Ghana person to acknowledge my own country. It's like, shouldn't I just be living on my country? But I guess it's proper protocol to acknowledge those who make things possible for me, and in that country makes everything possible. So yeah, so I want to acknowledge my country. I want to acknowledge my elders. I want to acknowledge the other writers and poets in this piece, because our words are, even though we wrote individually, our words are now connected forever in this piece. And also Mod for putting this together. But also, I just really want to thank the Unbound Collective for their unwavering support of other Aboriginal artists. They're very nurturing, they're very loving people. And in that, I don't know, just sparks of energy and creativity are able to fly because of that love and the space that they create for other Aboriginal people. So thank you. All right. I'm going to read my poem, which if you go into the exhibition, you'll see on the wall that it's actually 4 poems. And it's going to be a continuing saga of poems that are connected to river. And these are just the first 4. So collectively, they're known as river poems. And the first one's called State of River. I cry when I see a plastic island float by on a river of fractured streams, now a canal for wastewater. Ghost of River. Standing by the river, head tilted to one side, shoulders weighted in sorrow, I find it hard to see such beauty in this river, as it reflects painful memories. I collect and hide them amongst the reeds, tucked under swans nesting their eggs. I ask the trees to absorb and release them in their blooms, so we can breathe the scent of you. This river runs long, shallow in depth, unlike your life, short but deep. Love of river. Gum trees rattle in hot winds. White smoke billows, we cloud our bodies to arrest our worries and heal us from fear. Ducks fuss in the shallows around the feet of an ancestral pose. Through song and mud, the river calls me, calls us. We strip off our clothes and jump in. Work of river. Old Nana works on the banks where the river swallows the dirt. As she turns the topsoil, the yams are layered out in a line, just like ants marching. Nana protects them within the dirt, safe. Now we can rest, as seeds know how to grow. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dominic.
Deadly.
Yeah, isn't it? It's just, I every time I go in and I read that work particularly, I'm struck by incredible sort of waves of sadness. And then kind of these bursts of freedom and the importance of protection. I get all muddled just being with it. So I really appreciate that tangle of feelings. Dominic, can you tell us a little bit more about, I mean, I'm intrigued that this might be a series that connects to river. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you're hoping through this work?
Well, like I'm Ghana and Ngarrindjeri, so both of my people, we have a lot of rivers on our country, and other people don't have rivers. Some people don't have rivers, some people do. Some people, their rivers dry up and they don't get water, but for some time. But we always had water flowing, particularly Ngarrindjeri with the Murray coming through our country. So a lot of our lives were around rivers, and well, before colonization, and then post-colonization, there's a lot of stuff, particularly for Ghana people. We were kept by the river down near Possum House and the weir. So there's a lot of history to unpack, and Natalie teaches us well about the archives and the stories there. So that the river always kept coming up. And then just in my personal life, there are so many significant things that happen by the river. I live near the Gawler River. In fact, I live near the mouth of the Gawler River, and it's completely dry now. There's no water in it. They've dammed it up. We live, the Light River is just north of us. That's completely dry as well. And, so I think about how the river is life and how we live our life by the river, and how those two things are hand in hand, and how there are just stories that echo through so many decades, so many years, so many thousands of years about the importance of the river in our lives. So it makes sense that they're all kind of just connected.
Yeah. What strikes me about that kind of sovereignty never ceded, that kind of grief of holding space, but also bearing witness. And I was thinking about Jodie Bird's kind of unconquered and unconquerable, but at the same time, there's things that are being irrevocably changed, in terms of microplastics and pollution, and kind of a disregard, an uncaringness, that it's all there in those poems. But yeah, it's beautiful, Dominic.
Yeah. And what I love about the poem too, Dominic, is the way you really speak so lovingly about how Nana protects country, and the synergy of that with obviously the Unbound Collective's works, where we're honouring our old people, but in particular our mothers and our nanas and our great grandmothers, and how they play such an important role in teaching us and guiding us, and also that protection of country. And I think that loving connection of country, in spite of the effects of colonialism, really sort of resonates through your poem. And it's actually, the way you say it is so beautiful as well. You actually draw me in. I feel like you're just drawing me in. I feel like I'm going down the river with you, and the significance of the old stories and the long-held philosophies, but the impact as a result of the changed landscape because of colonisation. But still that seed of honouring our old people is always there. So collaborating with you, Dominic, has been such a pleasure, and it's lovely to hear a Ghana Ngarrindjeri male really reflect in this way, in this beautiful poetic way, about country. And
I agree. I agree. And for me, Dominic, that's so beautiful. And you're beautiful, obviously. We love you. I love you. But I was just thinking as you were speaking, I think what your poem has done and what this project's done for me, someone who's coming from Yidinji country, Mabarbara and rainforest country, and no rivers. Anywhere we go, we see water. You know, even though it might be small, you know, it used to be big, and then it's kind of, as you said, it starts to dry up. You know, so for me, you've given me, I think, through your poem and your articulation and love and that deepness around how rivers become so much a part of, it's an embodied thing. And so even while I'm out of country and I'm in Ghana country, I still think of the rivers where I come from, and wherever we travel, we bump into those rivers. But what I found when I came to South Aussie was, where are the rivers? I felt myself really dry. And I knew that there were a lot of Queenslanders, a lot of mob from Darwin who thought similar ways, because, you know, Murray liked to go fishing. But what you've done for me, Dominic, is you've really introduced me, and I pay respect to you and the young mob that did this poem, and Ali and Simone and Natalie, for allowing this journey around river to actually speak to the body, because we are made up of water and we need river. You know, we need that water. So I really want to thank you for that. And your poem have really kind of, I don't know, lightened the load, or I don't know. It's interesting. You brought me, I pay a lot of respect to you. And I really love it. So thank you, Dominic. Thank you very much. I don't know what else to say. I feel like crying.
Yeah, no, I do too, Faye. Like listening to you speak it and actually seeing the work with the gorgeous animation that Ali did, and footage and the incredible editing from, you know, our just our beloved friend and colleague and editor Jess. And you know, it's an incredible collaboration, and this is the first time that we've done this work where we've brought in other collaborators in this particular way. So it's a new kind of iteration of our works from Unbound Collective. And I must say, it's just like, you know, it's just like very heart lifting, because I mean, we recognise the position that we're in as privileged Aboriginal women in, you know, academia, the work that we create, we get voice, but to be able to work with community in this way as well, I think it elevates the work in a way that, I don't know, it just gives resonance way beyond. It's just beautiful to collaborate with you and the other poets. And I do, Dom, like you're an award-winning poet, and Diana, Carly and Taylor have never written a poem before. And, you know, their words are exquisite. That's just that, and that's what country does. At country, if you actually really sit with country and you sit by beautiful places like Karawira Parry and really, you know, listen to country and that heartbeat of country, that flow, you know, just being able to honour that place through poetry. I remember them saying to us, but I've never written a poem before with poetry, and you know, and they got quite anxious about it. Not overly anxious, but you know, it was big conversations about what the expectation of was writing a poem with this project. And it's really like, no, this is a reflection, this is your voice. And I think, I don't know, I think it's one of my favourite projects because of the words that you bring to it. And I know that Ali's used it quite a lot in teaching and already. And so your voices are reaching, you know, so many other people other than a mod. And the students' responses are, you know, everybody's incredibly moved. It's very beautiful. So thank you so much.
Yeah. We've been thinking a lot about kind of movement and what connects us. So I guess we've been really thinking about water.
Ali, you're on mute.
Oh, am I?
No.
Am I on mute? Can you hear me?
No, you're good. Yeah.
Yeah, we've been thinking about water a lot, as, you know, like we're thinking about being on and off country and how much water travels. So it moves through our bodies, and it moves across the planet in all these kinds of ways, but also, I guess, the moment that we're at collectively is really, you know, we've been really kind of considering how to there's something really gentle, and I agree with what Faye and Nat, and I honour you and all of the words that you've all brought to kind of thinking about Karawira, but also all of the little creeks, and a lot of those creeks have been made into drains, and also are incredibly polluted. Like, I've been reading a lot about the kind of the pollution of, say, Little Para River, which is the river that I grew up, the little creek. It's not a river, it's a creek, a little tiny magical creek that I grew up next to Salisbury Highway. I grew up on Salisbury Highway, and we used to ride our bikes to this little creek, which was totally magical. I felt its magic when I was a kid, and apparently now it hasn't got any life in it because of the runoff from the roads. It's totally poisoned. And when I read that, I just cried. But you know, it's like, how do we bear that? And you know, and thinking about what we can do that's regenerative, that's generative, that's also going to be because it's not our right to be so sad that we stop loving and being you know, incredibly full of life for the world as well. So it's just that push and that pull that I've been considering as well. Anyway, thanks.
No, I'm glad you responded there, Ali, because that was one of the questions that I think arises out of listening to Dominic's work, but also our conversations and the desire to do something that speaks to the place where we are located, so close to the river as well. And as I said, in a very urban concrete environment, you know, next to the train line and the, you know, tall buildings and the bridge, and it's very concreted. And so just reflecting then on that, you know, that connection to country when it is such an urbanized environment as well, or when the environment has been so changed, you know, through modeling or through pollution. So I'm curious to sort of hear about that response and how you're approaching that in your work and your own reflections as well.
Yeah. I mean, I just think about the line between grief and love. There's a kind of, you know, the relationship that we have, like, and sometimes that it's a sense of it's, you know, it's almost that unbearable kind of inexpressible loss of feeling as though something very, very profound is you can't quite reach it anymore because it's been destroyed on some level, but it's still there in us in a way as well. So I don't know, Dominic, if you want to yarn about that, because that's what really strikes me. And you know, when you said, when I cry when I see a plastic island, like I do too. I don't know what to. I feel sometimes like, we can talk about it, or I could just go down there and start picking up the rubbish. But you know, now they're talking about these microplastics, and I was listening on the radio earlier in the week. They were talking about how every rainfall all over the planet is full of this particular poison from non-stick fry pans, the foam that they use in putting out fires, and that all rainfall on the entire planet is now polluted with this substance, which is above the levels that are recommended in the US, right? So it's possible to clean it, but it's very expensive. So what does that mean? Like, how do we, you can't shy away from that. But on another level, you know, you've got to be able to actually also speak. So it's like that. And I'm also really conscious of the young people and the children, and kind of giving them the loving, nurturing beauty, the gentleness, the kindness of country. Yeah.
Yeah, and one of our guests this evening, Sarah, has said, especially to you, Dominic, lovely comment in the chat, but also notes that the work is wonderful for giving a voice to the younger generation, allowing them to see that they can share their stories and experiences and be proud to tell those stories, which reflects on what you've just added there as well, Ali.
Yeah, but I think like this, it's like when I think about like things like global warming and that, it's always at because it's such a, you know, it's the biggest catastrophe that we're facing, and it's such a global thing, but yet it is so local as well. And I often sometimes when I'm feeling, I don't know, I don't know why I do it, but I'll go look at maps and see which parts of the land will be underwater. There's like projected maps that you can see where once the sea levels rise, which lands will actually be underwater and what we will lose. And some of them are predicting that, you know, Port Augusta will be gone, and those, you know, the Lake Airs and all that will return to ocean, because the land that prevents them from being ocean at the top of the Gulf is not that high. And, you know, so it's like, it feels very overwhelming, but there's also like there's a lot of, this is like the hypocrisy of governments, and particularly local government. Local government has a lot to answer for in this, in that, like, you know, I come back to the Gawler River. I live in Two Wells. Just the other side of the Gawler River is Virginia, where we grow all our vegetables. It's now currently being filled up with houses. Come have a drive. They're building at the base of the Gawler River. They're building the largest housing estate that is the size of Golden Grove and Mawson Lakes put together. That's how huge it is. And that's at the mouth of, on the floodplains of the mouth of a river. The land here is becoming so salty, because what's happening is we are taking all the fresh water out of the aquifilter. We're not letting the water run down the river and replenishing it. That I went to that we're getting the salt because the seawater is actually moving in under the land, under the table waters underneath. Because what held that at bay was the water from that in the aquifilter, the fresh water would be so much of it under the ground that it would move. It would take 1 year for it to move 1 foot closer to the sea. But now it is that within, you know, 100 and something years of colonization in this country, we have now reversed that, so that the seawater is now actually coming in to where the fresh water took 1 year to move 1 foot at a time. So that's that's, you know, that's so devastating to hear that, the impact of what we are doing on country. But so there is this, you know, there is that stuff that motivates me to write, motivates me to take action. But it also can make you feel very hopeless because it feels so overwhelming, like the plastic, like the non-stick frying pan chemicals that are in the air. Like how do you combat that? And sometimes words aren't enough, but yeah, you do hope that, you know, action, that there is some sort of action, and there is, but it's local, and we need more of that. We need more local groundswell to push back, particularly on our rivers, because, you know, the only reason the River Torrens runs is because they've blocked a dam the weir, and they hold stagnant water to make it look European. That's the only reason we have the River Torrens there with water in it, is so it looks like a European parkland. And does anyone remember when the weir got opened at nighttime one time and the water all ran out and there was all this like rubbish and everything? But right down the middle of it, there was still like this, it was almost like the bed of the creek or the bed of the river that was there. And it was just waiting for us I was kind of like, don't close the weir again. Like, this is our time to clean this up. It's our time to plant in reeds. It's our time to let the natural flow of this river come back. But of course, white governments have to block it and, return to the Torrens Lake. But, I do look to some good councils. There's like Salisbury Council that does a great job at the water management. They have an incredible water reclaiming and a natural filtration process, and they pump that water like it has a natural cleaning process that the water goes through. Even though Mawson Lakes is done some horrific damage in terms of being a suburb that's been built, but there is some really good environmental aspects part of that and why those water systems exist there. So anyways, I'm rambling now. So
no, I think what you're getting to, Dominic, is the need for action and for considered action, but also for different action, which I've had a conversation earlier today about the role of art and activism and the importance of that. And I think this work comes across as so gentle and so moving, but it also I like the fact that it's probably the last thing that our audience will see before they leave, because I think it kind of, it gives hope, but it also gives responsibility. I think there is this real sense of leaving the exhibition with this real kind of power or need to do something in response to reflect, especially. So I just wondered, Ali and Faye, do you want to talk a little bit around that approach that the work that you do through art and the collective allows you to kind of grapple with synthesizing these responses and moving towards something that's activism? Or
yeah, and I was just thinking how different this project was, and I think what it did was opened up, I don't know, a different kind of thinking or a more intimate, because I teach about intimacy. I teach about the idea of colonial contact and the way that that's an intimate encounter. And I think when I say that Dominic's poems and the poems of all those, the young fellas, the young women, actually allowed for me, who's not from South Aussie, I'm from North Queensland and I'm a Yidiji Barbara woman. And it allowed for me to hear their voices and to just to really listen and to see. And Sylvia Winter talks about the inner eye. And the inner eye allows this deeper kind of listening, this deeper kind of seeing. And I think that's what these poems have done. And I have to thank Ali, Simone and Natalie for, sometimes I'm a lazy woman, right? I like to just kind of go to bed and just relax and not think about anything. But these sister girls, they say, Faye, come on, we want to. And just being a part of the project, I feel as if we're going down a different kind of process. I know the Unbound is really beautiful, and I know that people like to listen to us, and I know we do research, and I know we talk about decolonisation, but this to me was a different kind of project. And I think it was a deeper, intimate connection, particularly for me. And I really, but it was so simple. It was so simple in its making, which was really interesting. Not that the Unbound stuff is simple, but sometimes we take a long time to get to that place. But this was like, let's do this, let's do this, let's do that. And then suddenly it all came together. Yeah. And we were busy at the time, but it was like, no, I want this, I want that. And then I felt that. So while it seemed simple, it seemed deep, it seemed intimate, and it actually almost was sacred.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can use that word in that way, but to me, as someone from out of country in Ghana country, you know, to me, it felt really, really sacred. And even as you were reading your poem, Dominic, I started to feel that way again. I started to feel like you, and I'm so much older than a lot of the young mob that's giving the poem. And I think, not that I'm 100 years old or anything, but I think what I think it did for me was actually allow me to feel, not my age, but allowed me to kind of, allowed me the allowance to feel my age in the space, if that makes sense. It's really interesting. I find it interesting. I've been thinking about it as I watched the work, and I've watched it a few times, but tonight, and then hearing you, Dominic, you know, speak your poem and voice it as clearly and articulately as you did, and how intimate, I just was like, wow, we are, you know, I mean, and I guess what I'm also thinking, because one of my elders have passed away, and so I'm thinking about the loss that we get, the loss of things. You know, when we talk about colonialism and we talk about pollution and we talk about land and we talk about rivers, there's always a loss. And I don't want to think that, I don't feel or think that I want to really, I know there's a loss, but I don't want it to overwhelm me, as you said, Dominic. I don't want it to overwhelm us. I want to be able to love the process and the things that we do, because it's going to be for the next generation. And that's what I like about this particular work. And so thank you, girls. Thank you, Dominic. It's just, and thank you, Maud, for asking us to do it, because, you know, I think it's quite a bloody, sorry, it's just a deadly piece. And it's it's very intimate. Sorry, I'm going on.
That possibility to change.
I think it's that,
well.
it's that intimacy with country, Faye, and that we talk about all the time in our work and in our lives and in everything we do. And I'm just looking at Taylor's words here. The bird's song starts to sound like distant hymns. The whispering breeze, a gentle reminder to breathe. And that's what we tell each other all the time. We have to, you know, to keep each other strong in the work that we do, in the institution that we work in, which can be very violent and difficult and hard at times, as well as very liberating, and it's a very privileged space as well. So we acknowledge all of that, but it's hard. We still have to remind each other to stop and listen to country and to breathe. And it's that gives us our strength, and it's that gives us, you know, we have to stop and listen. And I think of what Taylor said, the bird songs start to sound like distant hymns, and there is something very, you know, a very, for want of another word, religious, and I'm not necessarily a religious person, but it's that deep spiritual connection and listening to country, and it's that heartbeat, and knowing very, very clearly that our ancestors are always with us, and there is that intimacy with the past and intimacy with history that isn't an intimacy that all of the broader community recognizes or accepts, or is willing to be open to know that history is always with us. History is what shapes our present and our future, and the history of country is intimately, that is what it is. So yeah, I think of these words give me strength, you know, and it is what we also remind each other to do, to breathe, but breathe country, breathe with the rhythm, those rhythms of country. And without that, when, as you said, Dom, that country is everything. Without that, we're nothing. We don't survive. So it's that honouring of that survival and what that means. Yeah.
There's a piece in Diana's work as well, which is the piece that she starts with and finishes with, which is what has this place seen? And when you were saying
yes.
that, I was thinking, it's like a conversation, you know, where you're in conversation with the river. What has it seen? What am I seeing? How do I present something new to a river that's had these experiences over colonization? Can there be something? It felt to me like there's this opportunity for something new to be brought to the conversation when you were talking just then.
Yeah.
And also creating space, like the this idea of good relations or local, that kind of local, the possibility of local, that there's something constant about the river, and that it always changes. It will always change. And so despite everything, it changes, but also that we can have good relations with each other. And when you listen to and look at the people around you and create space to hear, that just came together, you know, that these community are with us, you know, this is beautiful. Their words are what we need to be hearing, because this is their, you know, when we think about being our elders' manifestation of, you know, our ancestors in the present, these are our ancestors in the present. These are, you are
those trees, the trees bearing witness.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned that in your words in it too, Ali, about the trees bearing witness. I think trees before the long lawful time, and these trees bear witness to change, and that's what Carly's saying too. What has this place seen? And it is very much a bearing witness piece of, you know, this creative piece that we've all created together and collaborated on is another form of bearing witness. Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that's something else I just wanted to pick up was, you know, you mentioned that this is a new, I think you said too as well, Faye, this is sort of a departure from some of the other Unbound work that you've done where you're starting to work with collaborators. So I just wondered, you know, how that's sort of different, and I guess a lot of the work that we were familiar with, I mean, as I said, the last work I saw was the work at Vital Statistics around domestic servitude, and it used a lot of archival material, and this material is, well, I don't know, the material is fresh even if the content is centuries old. So I'm just wondering about that departure, and you know, are there things that you particularly learnt by the different approach, or?
Yep. I was just, as you were talking, I was just thinking also, you know, I think what's really, really brilliant about this piece of work is that we've centered the youth. We've centered the voices of the ancestors in the future and in the present. And I think that's what's really good. And so it allows an almost a staying still. You know, you can stay still and we can meditate, but we can hear those voices. And as, you know, when I think about the poems also, you know, for someone who is from North Queensland, and I do go past and I do look at the rivers and I see the rivers, you know, it's lessened and it's not as flowing as it usually is. And it's only flows when the rainforest comes through, and, you know, I see the falls and all of that sort of stuff. You know, I see the mountains and all that. But what this does is this allows me to be in my heart and my soul a little bit activism or revolutionary, if that makes sense. You know, and I can share that kind of understanding with family members. And Ali and I have written a chapter, I think, and with Simone, around rivers and waters, and I talk about one of the rivers in my mother's country and the fact that, you know, there's toxic and there's, you know, there's mining that goes into that river, but every time the rain comes through, there's a bit of a cleansing. And so my family enjoy their moments in that river, you know, and they engage with it and they play with it, and, you know, and to me that's the beautiful thing about this poem. And I think that's what I'm trying to say is that for something as beautiful and as simple as what this project's done, it's really reinforced not only country, but what's in country. It's really allowed me to see when I go home, you know, Yidinji country, it's allowed me to see country in another way, and what's lost, but what's also gained. I mean, my sisters are seeing possums and my sisters are seeing, you know, nungbat, and, you know, I never knew this was going on. And so it's really, there are new plants, you know, so there is a renewal around this also. And I think that's what rivers can do. I don't know if you think that way, Dominic, but I think rivers can also bring in renewal. So it's interesting. Yeah, so thank you for that question. That was a really beautiful question.
I think our work, just going back to that question as well, Kristen, our work is it's always been a call and response to each other, but it's always been a call and response to country. Like when we do our performative work, we have a script and we speak to each other, and it's very much we're very connected, but we're connected, it's very site specific. And yes, we use the archives a lot in our work, but the embodied archive is always central. So our blood memory, the haunting of place, the hauntology of always bumping into places and sites that always existed and will forever exist, yet they might be covered up by a concrete landscape or drain or building. But that place is always sacred country and sacred ground, and those sites will forever be there, even if it's in the hearts and minds and pumping through the bloods of our future generations. So yeah, I think that embodied archive is always central as well, and that call and response to each other is extended now to call and response with community and country in different ways.
Yeah, and I guess I mean, our previous workers, we've always included traditional owners. So we have had Uncle Lewis Burka O'Brien and Mickey O'Brien, and when we worked on Gadigal country, we had Gadigal traditional owners as well.
Brody family.
The Brody family down at Vital Statistics as well. So we've always involved community. I guess the difference is here that the creative work and the voices of Ghana community members has been at the forefront of the work, which has been really important. And I think that's a really lovely shift to our work, because in that process, it's like Ngabajig, we give to each other in that process, a reciprocal process, a mutual giving and a mutual sharing. But also thinking of, the broader sense of water flows and oceans, and part of our work has also been around the anti-nuclear activism. And if we do open up South Australia for future waste repositories, what it does, it opens our waterways up because it has to be transported. So then it's about what other poisons can enter our landscapes, and what do we need to do to actually voice and protect and stand side by side with traditional owners who are actually having this, the current fight around waste dump repositories, because that will have an impact on all of us. And again, it goes from the local to the national to the global. It is a big story, and it will have a significant local effect. So thinking through protection of country with future risks of nuclear waste is also something that we've thought about a lot.
Yeah.
Can I just say, I just wanted to say about the other participants who were worried about not being poets and that. And I say this to everyone, like, I often say, I actually don't write poems. Like, poems come to me, and you've just got to be listening and willing to actually take them. I get to edit them and play around with them, but the poem comes to me, and I believe that it comes to me through country. So, and I think a lot of Indigenous storytelling happens when Indigenous people sit and listen to country, and that will tell you, it would tell you what story needs to be told and whether you're the one to tell it. And that dates right back to our songlines, our dreaming stories, all those things. They came from country. They didn't come from us. So that's why I don't say I'm a creator of storytelling. I'm just a continuation of storytelling of thousands of years. So, and like, I do believe non-Aboriginal people have a responsibility to listen. If you're going to be here, you have a responsibility to listen, and you also have a responsibility to bear witness as well. And that means putting your pen to paper to write or speak or whatever. So,
or protect the country as well, like get involved in local community, because so much of that local and I guess the global things, the big picture and the very intimate relationships are all really important. And I think that kind of the way that we have been learning to work together, and it's ongoing, is a kind of a gentle openness. So we try, even though we might be furious at various times about various things, we try to think about a kind relationality, but also an acceptance and a flexibility. So creating some space for things to come and then being open to whatever that is. So it was a very open process, but we had a lot of trust in the people who were engaged in that creative work that it would come together, and it did. And so in that sense, it wasn't this kind of like, it's not holding anything too tightly, because that's, you want to create space in the work for thought, but also for kindness and curiosity. There's something about those little purple spotted gudgeon. And when I was reading about that, because that animation work started a while ago, and I'd been reading about how those fish are nearly extinct and how the primary school kids had been breeding them to re-release them back into the Murray and into river systems, right? And I was thinking, oh, that's so beautiful, and these beautiful little tiny fish, they're amazing, and just kind of like, so the hopefulness of that, of the children engaging in very generative activity that's, right, okay, they're nearly extinct, let's do something. And so I like that action part of it too. Yeah. We've been interested in that because we talk and we think and we read and we write a lot, but making is different, and it's a different kind of a process. So that's been we've been so lucky to be able to do that together, and it's kept us really strong and grounded in lots of different ways. So, and thanks for the invitation. How long? What's the timing like? How long are we meant to be doing?
No, so I was just gonna wrap us up shortly, because okay. I think that's probably perfect timing to kind of just do a final reflection, really, because I was thinking as I've been listening, there is something really special about this work that does have that simplicity and that spiritual quality that you referenced, Faye, and it's also got that very big global kind of space that we've talked about, plus being very, very intimate and very small. I really love that comment around, I think you said again, Faye, we've centered the voices of the ancestors in the future by working with young people. So I feel like the work collapses these ideas of time and space, and it just exists as a I don't know, as a thing beyond all of those constraints and forms that we put around it. And I do remember when we were meeting, and you were sort of saying, no, we've got the plan and trust us, it's all going to come together, and we weren't concerned. We knew it was, but I think a little later you were like, oh, it has all come together, and there was that real sense of joy and surprise at just how easy it was. And I think that's what you're referring to, Dominic. It's that ease of listening and being with what is coming up that allows the work to shine. So I also did want to I especially congratulate everybody involved, because this work was the winner of the Best Indigenous Project at the Australia and New Zealand National International Museum and Galleries Awards, which was awarded in June, and we're super excited about that. But I think it's that openness of the project that people are just drawn to, and I think that really showed. So yeah, we're really excited about that, and also really wanted to congratulate you for the work.
Thank you.
And I think it is a reflection of just how special it is. It does have a really special quality, I think, and it's been really interesting tonight to hear you talk about the things that drive you, the experiences of working across, different cultures and countries with that call and response to wherever you're working, thinking about what you've talked about in terms of the poetry that you're writing, Dominic, and the animation and the purple spotted gudgeon who does bring me much joy, that act of doing. Are there any final reflections that you'd like to add before we finish up?
I'd just like to say it's full of love. I mean, there's no other way I can speak about it except the fact that it's so full of love that it oozes. It oozes it, and that's the beautiful thing about it, is that it oozes love. And I think sometimes we're not allowed to think about love. And so, but it does. That's what this particular project has done.
Mm.
So again, thank you to the people, all the sisters and the brothers. Yay. And thank you for the invite.
And I want to acknowledge Kia and Lisa and yourself, for having faith in that process that and giving us a big time, a long run up. And, in a sense, it's been quite joyful to work on. So, and I want to acknowledge all of your work there in that space. So it's been great.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And so I just also wanted to finish because I really enjoyed the way we were so taken after the introduction that I jumped in without any formal introductions whatsoever. So I would just like to, for everybody listening, just, clarify that we are here with the Unbound Collective. So Ali Baker, Simone Ter, Faye Blanche, Natalie Harkin, with poet Dominic Guerrera, and the other poets are Taylor Power, Carly Takari Dodd, and Deanna Newchurch, and you can find those works. But I just thought I really should say that because we jumped straight in, and I just didn't want people wondering. And yeah, so just to, I guess, a couple of final important things that I should mention is that reflect the light and shade of a long story. There's some information about the contributors on the MOD website, mod.org.au. The exhibition itself is in until the end of November with us, so there's still plenty of time to come in and see it and sit with it. And so I do encourage you to, I'm there every week and it's actually just so beautiful to be able to pop in almost daily and say hello to the fish and think about the river and feel the love. And I think the final thing that I would say is that, we've talked a lot about the life-giving aspects of rivers and water. And I think when you talk about that being a work of love, Faye, that all makes beautiful sense. So yeah, thank you so much for the work. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for your patience in having to reorganize this. We cannot wait to see you in person and look forward to what happens next. I think, it's just the start of something really beautiful. Lisa's going to play the video one more time if people came in late and want to sit with it again, or sit with it again, as a really nice way to round out. But with that, I'll say our formal goodbyes and wish you all well for the evening. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Hear the river flow humming softly. A river lullaby floats on home rivers and wetlands in the sky. Life's arteries forever pumping stories of place. We inherit memory on rivers flowing. The river is awake. The river has memory. The river moves and flows. Water is a life source and connects us all. Protecting country is at the heart of First Peoples.
Step by step, I walk along paths submerged in a beautiful grounding energy. Thriving parklands wrap the bustling city like a blanket. This is my ancestors' land. How much of this land is left to our people? I stand here grounded on my country. How much beauty has been taken away? I crave connection to traditions. How much culture has been destroyed? My ancestors walk beside me every step of the way. How many stories have been lost? I wonder when there will be action. How many died at the hands of colonization? How many continue to die? Step by step I walk, my ancestors beside me, every step of the way.
What has this place seen? Generations of change, loss, devastation, and new beginnings. Through waves of change, it continues to nurture life within it and surrounding it. Its life ensures the rich, natural diversity of this place. All the things we notice at a glance, but often take for granted. To survive in this way takes strength, but to take the leap to thrive calls for immense courage. Walking through this place, I see its strength and survival. From the birds who call this place home, to the trees that are anchored in its banks. I admire this strength, this resilience. It inspires me to be strong, in spite of the doubt and odds weighed against me. Not just for myself, but for my family. What has this place seen?
On Yata, the waterways, the beautiful magical creeks and wetlands of the earth and the spirit of country have been transformed into concrete drains. Before the construction of the southwestern suburbs drainage works, the river spread out into lagoons near the site occupied by the Adelaide Airport. The river was once a permanent stream, fed by springs and prodigal in breeding fish and yabbies. Its banks were the natural habitat of possums, ducks, lizards, snakes, birds and insects, kangaroos and emus, and also wallabies, moved freely along the river gums and grassy woodlands of the plains. This is the place of beginnings, where freshwater springs give forth to wetlands. This is a place where the trees carried the marks of the time before, the thousands of generations of our ancestors who have cared for this place. There are trees on this country that were marked by our old people during the long lawful time, the time before the concrete rivers and polluting engines. We speak of this ongoing racism and environmental destruction of the planet, and how this destruction can be seen here as the continuation of colonial processes into the present.
I cry when I see a plastic island float by on a river of fractured streams, now a canal for wastewater. I stand by the river, head tilted to one side, shoulders weighted in sorrow. I find it hard to see beauty in this river anymore. It just reflects painful memories of you. I collect and hide them amongst the reeds, tucked under swans nesting their eggs. I ask the trees to absorb and release them in their blooms, so we can breathe a scent of you. This river runs long, but shallow in depth. Unlike your life, short but deep. Gum trees rattle in hot winds. White smoke billows. We cloud our bodies to arrest our worries and heal us from fear. Ducks fuss in the shallows around the feet of an ancestral pose. Through song and mud, the river calls me, calls us. We strip off our clothes and jump in. Old Nana works on the banks, where the river swallows the dirt. As she turns the topsoil, the yams are layered out in a line, just like ants marching. Nana protects them within the dirt. Safe. Now we can rest, as seeds know how to grow.
People see your pretty face as if that's all you have to offer. I see you for what you are, a lover, a provider, a place of refuge for Aboriginal children as they shied away from the prying eyes of invaders. A survivor with depth not many dare to explore. Home. Majestic and ancient, your grounding presence so powerful, it dwarfs the buildings around you and renders them invisible. Sitting on your banks and marvelling at your grace, I imagine our people meandering along your water's edge. Running river, racing thoughts, the birds' songs start to sound like distant hymns. The whispering breeze, a gentle reminder to breathe while I digest what life was like for the Ghana children that were forced to recite them. I wonder how often your tears ripple the water as people bash a ball across the plain without ever questioning how many of my ancestors' bodies fertilised the growth surrounding it. Beneath your calm surface lies blood-stained roots, generations of untold truths, and a graveyard of dreams crushed by invasion. And yet, despite it all, you are here, filled with sustenance and hope. You are alive. The spirit of this land, invincible and almighty. 'Tis by her I am guided. 'Tis she who makes me strong.